Welcome to episode 215 of the Poorhammer Podcast. I am your host, Brad. This is my co-host, Eric.
How's it going?
Today we have an episode. I'd say it's exciting, but it's going to be a bloodbath.
Yeah, I mean, it can be exciting in some ways.
Yeah. So we are doing a codex review of sorts. We're going to do a ranking of the codices from 10th edition. It's a tier list, everybody.
Sounds good.
All right, so we did this in 9th edition at the end of the edition as a farewell to 9th. We're doing the same now for 10th. However, I really want to preface this episode. We need to give context for what these rankings are.
Yeah, there is a bit of context necessary. Primarily, what we're actually ranking.
10th edition had codices. It also had grotmas and quarterly detachments and great data slates that happened every 3 months for the most part. And all of those rebalanced the game, fixed things up that were poorly written before, etc., etc. Lots of great things happened.
Yeah, added a bunch of new stuff that are all good, positive things, but they still sold a book that existed that you had to buy.
They still did sell books that it contained your rules and that you could not play without. So we are ranking the codices, the $60 book that you had to pay money for to keep playing your faction.
Yeah, not all of the extra stuff that we just talked about, which was great.
Yep. So Grotmas, fantastic, wonderful. Lots of people got fun toys from it. Extra quarterly detachments that came out, saved quite a few factions. Data slate updates, completely rewrote certain factions. AdMech, we'll get to you. Those don't count. This is about how much of a waste of money your $60 codex was.
And yeah, let's make sure this isn't one of those like monkey paw curls and they don't do any more Grotmas anymore type thing. We want those. Those are great, but like not what is in this episode.
All of the free rules updates in 10th edition were wonderful. Data slates balancing the game, fixing things that were poorly written, all of that, wonderful.
Yeah.
Great job. Grotmas was a great way to inject some life into the game again and should have happened a year before it did, and then still happened when it did in addition.
A lot of that stuff led to like actually a pretty balanced meta. Like there's definitely problems here and there, and like it's not perfectly 50-50 across everything, obviously, but like we're in actually a pretty good spot.
Yes, and we have been for most of the edition, to be honest. We talked about it before, but you cannot argue that 10th edition is not the healthiest the game has been. Is it perfect? No. Is it the healthiest it's been? Yes.
And they've been able to address things a lot quicker than they normally would have. But for all of those great, awesome things, we're looking at just the codexes. And as we're ranking these in this awesome tier list, we have to kind of like talk about what we're ranking here, not just like, oh yeah, we thought that one was pretty. We're primarily going to be focusing on how the codex was designed.
Yes, the design of it and the content of it. This is basically two things. One is how elegantly it was designed, how nice it was designed, the overall game designer aspect of it. Has nothing to do with balance. If your faction was stupid broken, it's not in your favor. If your faction was god awful and needed 15 buffs, it's not in your favor. It's just, was the design of the codex good? The second part, though, is content. You paid $60 for this book. Were you ripped off because it was a number of cents per word of rules, Tau?
Yeah.
For those interested in a longer version of the discussion we're trying to avoid right now, we did an entire episode called How Not to Design a Codex.
So the other thing, like you said, the power, the balance, like that stuff is secondary or not even really brought up when we're ranking these. Honestly, how fun they are to play or play against is more important to me because that has a feeling related to the design.
Did they feel flavorful? Did they represent the faction well? Do they have variety for that faction so that you don't get bored of it immediately?
Those are primary like things to look at when we're actually ranking these. So with that, where do we want to start?
Let's start by just mentioning what our tiers are, because I think it's going to put things into perspective for 10th edition.
All right.
If you like positive episodes, you're about to witness a bloodbath.
Watch watched our previous episode. That was fun.
Yeah, so our tiers are S tier, because you gotta have one. And then actually good,
Which is actually good.
and then acceptable on the 10th curve, which is this a good codex? Not in my opinion, but in the context of 10th edition, it's doing okay.
Yeah.
And then, well, at least I'm not that guy, which I feel like is self-describing the vibes of that category.
You don't really want to be there, but it could be worse.
And then we have the wonderful tier of criminal to charge for, allegedly. We're not actually calling Games Workshop criminals for these codices, allegedly. And then we have a wonderful tier called Did Not Finish.
We'll get to that one.
All right, with that out of the way, who do you want to start with, Eric?
Let's just start low. Let's go with Tau. You brought it up earlier, referencing the amount of money per word. Oh boy, Tau.
Tau is one I have extra salt for. This is one of the best discussions because Tau launched as a codex with 4 detachments, one of which was just 4 auxiliaries. It was the Crute detachment. I argue not as niche as some of these others we're going to discuss, where I think there were worse examples of a this is too niche to count.
I think Crute is definitely like a very focused detachment, but like,
It came with a Crute range expansion.
yeah.
It's okay, but the problem here is 4 detachments. Tau is not
Yeah.
a small range. Tau is not a lore light range. In preparation for a guest spot on Adeptus Ridiculous, I came up with 7 more detachments for Tau that they could have made in
Yeah.
the course of a few hours. That is how little of a shit they gave about writing this codex.
It's not good. So, like, to be fair, to start with, 4 is not that many detachments in a codex, even for 10th.
To put it another way, 4 detachments, you are paying $20 per detachment because your index came with 1.
Right. I mean, like, there is the chance of, like, okay, they're redesigning the index enough that, like, technically you could say it's new, but, like, also it's not. Yeah, 4 is just not enough.
No.
It just really isn't.
$20 is a lot of money. That buys like a fourth of a tank of gas this week.
Maybe an avocado.
So I'm going with the Tau Codex is straight up criminal to charge for.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. It isn't even like if you dig into it, oh, those 4 detachments were designed perfectly and stellar and are amazing. And like they're fine. The army rule is clunky at best. And that's like the fixed version that we've got eventually. Originally, it was actually also bad. So there's no real redeeming qualities to that codex. I'm good with it being in the allegedly tier.
There is an example of what not to do. Unfortunately, it will not remain alone.
Let's move on to one that I have a little bit more hope for. Let's take a look at Death Guard.
Okay, Death Guard. So to give context here, Death Guard came out and was quite broken balance-wise versus the other factions. It was really good. That doesn't give it any points.
No.
If anything, you could argue that needing errata should lower something, but it only got a soft touch to get it back down into line.
It kind of depends on like how it was broken. Like if it's just points and things are just kind of undercosted, or like, oh, they got like 1 or 2 little numbers changed, like whatever, it's fixable. But like Death Guard wasn't a fundamentally, we need to retry it.
Yeah.
It was broken, but not in like a let's scrap it and start over.
Now, for extra context, Death Guard's original army rule in the index was hated. It was considered an absolute nothing. Nobody liked it. It was extremely bad. It got an emergency patch where they just slapped on more rules to it to fix it temporarily. The Codex fixed it, and it's now considered quite good.
From the index, it was like, oh, this is an interesting idea. This doesn't work at all as it's printed, but like maybe you could get there somehow. And they did. Like as it's printed in the Codex, this is actually a pretty interesting army rule. I'm not completely sold on it for an army rule. It feels more like it'd be fun as a detachment, but that's okay. It works as an army rule, and it's pretty solid. It is interesting and unique. There are 6 detachments,
Which I said should be like the minimum bar.
that's kind of where you really want it to be minimum, but it isn't. It's a good number though.
The real problem is it's 6 detachments, but one of them is just how you play the demons in the faction. And the entire implementation of that in Chaos this edition was horrible, to say the least.
I was like, that's a hell of an understatement, but like, we'll move on.
Yeah.
That is like kind of a knock against the codex, but that's all of those codexes. It still has 5 pretty solid detachment options, though.
That have a lot of variety within them. They all are doing different stuff. I think this is one of the best examples of a codex in the edition. It is not S tier, but
No.
it belongs in actually good.
Yeah.
If every codex was about where Death Guard is, I'd have very few complaints about the codices.
I feel like we would have changed how we actually have our ranking scale here.
It would be a much more typical, like we did with 9th edition, where it's just S through D and we talk about them, and the ones that are in actually good might end up only in like B.
Yeah, because like acceptable would be C, maybe.
Acceptable on a curve would be C to D.
Yeah.
But we have multiple things below that.
So Death Guard actually good. And I also want to give like props for making the army rule actually work. That is awesome.
I appreciated them just re-looking at it, writing a new one. Votann got the same treatment, different amounts of like towards those two things. We'll talk about it in a minute. But yeah, I loved all that. This was well handled in the grand scheme of things. Actually good.
All right. So from there, I guess we'll hit an Imperium faction then.
Imperial Knights, you say?
Okay, yeah. Imperial Knights.
Imperial Knights is a good one to compare to Tau.
Actually, yeah.
Imperial Knights is not criminal in my opinion.
But it has 4 detachments.
It only has 4 detachments. However, Knights is a much smaller range than Tau by like 5 or 6 to 1. I'm not going to go do the math.
It's something like that, yeah.
Kit-wise, it's like probably 8 to 1. So much smaller faction. It's more forgivable to have a low count. 4 is still unacceptably low, but in the grand scheme of things with 10th edition's grading curve here, all right, it's Imperial Knights, 4 ways, not too bad.
It also works because Imperial Knights is focused. Like, you have Knights. That's the faction. It's not like, oh, we've got a bunch of uniquely different things going on here. Knights are Knights. We've got 4. It would be nice to have more, obviously, but like, these 4 do a pretty decent job of giving you options.
The thing I will say is, at best, this could be acceptable on the 10th curve. Because again, 4 detachments. This is low. Like, I'm stretching my willingness here. That said, IK had the problem of like emergency errata, just like last edition with Votann. Less insane this time, but still real bad. So this is another iteration of the codex that you buy is worthless the day you buy it because we had to errata it immediately.
There's always some amount of that like just exists because of FAQs.
I don't care when it's like, hey, there's a typo on page 89.
Right. But like when it actually impacts the game quite noticeably.
Yeah, when it's, oops, we made it so that mathematically your army is going to dominate literally half of the factions just by showing up. That's an oopsie whoopsie. That's the 9th edition Votann special. I punished Votann for it last time. I'm going to punish Knights for it this time. I think it goes from acceptable on the 10th curve down to, well, at least I'm not that guy.
Yeah, I mean, it is one of those, like, we try not to look at balance and all that stuff and, like, what's powerful, but, like, it was a design aspect to a certain point of, like, it had to be fixed immediately because they screwed up that badly. So, yeah, I'm fine with actually docking it down. Do we want to just do Chaos Knights since we're here?
Sure. Chaos Knights and Imperial Knights, very much the same arguments across the board. Look at that. Knights being treated equal.
Yeah, 4 detachments.
The thing I will give Chaos Knights, I want to give a little props to GW here. So Chaos Knights doesn't have the day 1 errata type stuff working against it. Chaos Knights gets special little bonus points from me, even though I do not like how they solved the problem. For the first time in possibly since their inception, large Chaos Knights are as playable as War Dogs. Props to GW for figuring the math out finally and going, wait a second, mathematically big Knights were always worse to take. Not a fan of the solution of just make Knights as cheap as a tank.
Yeah, the whole like 300 point. What is the cheapest one? I think it was like 350, something like that for a big Knight. That doesn't feel right.
Yeah, we could up Knights another 100 points a pop and give them equivalent buffs so that they feel worth it. But like we have figured out, we're almost to where AOS is, where it's like you can point something at almost half of a game worth of points and have it be debatable to take it or not still because you've balanced it well. We're getting there. We're almost to the point where we can start doing that. And it's like, okay, let's have Knights that cost 400 to 500 plus points that are worth that much, but don't break the game. It is doable.
Yeah, we'll get there.
This is solvable. I will say that on the 10th curve, this is acceptable only because of the 10th curve. 4 is still too few detachments.
And I'm not a huge fan of your army rule.
Yeah, we should talk about it. We continued the trend of, hey, look, Chaos Knights are scary, so let's make a Battle Shock rule. cool.
Battle Shock is dumb, but like they tried and they tried something kind of cool. It didn't work because Battle Shock is still dumb, but like from a design aspect, I look at this and I'm like, that's interesting.
11th edition's Battle Shock changes mean that all of the Battle Shock armies should be more fondly remembered as carryovers into 11th edition, but honestly,
We'll see.
AOS got rid of it and no one's really missed it. So like,
Yeah.
when half of your factions in lore shouldn't do it anyway, it's just try other stuff, guys.
Yeah, but well done, Chaos Knights. You've beaten Imperial Knights once again.
It's just like homework.
Yeah, exactly. So from there, let's take a look at Tyranids.
Sure. Tyranids, one of the first codices of the edition. It wasn't great.
No, not really.
I don't even know if I would ever say it was good.
So it had a decent amount of detachments. It had 6.
Which should be enough to put it up to at least acceptable.
Because, like, I mean, that's pretty solid. Tyranids is a large range. So, like, they had plenty of design space to work with there.
When the Codex came out, we were already saying, where is this detachment? Where is that detachment? You could do way more than 6.
Yeah, but we're on the 10th curve. So, like, 6 is pretty decent. It had some, like, variability between it. It wasn't just all generic. They weren't all very good.
You had an army rule that is extremely trash as written.
It's not even particularly great where it ended up, but like as it was written in the Codex, pretty terrible. Synapse was basically useless.
And Shadow in the Warp was not much better.
Yeah, it's not sounding like a lot of good stuff there.
No.
So what are we thinking?
I think it ends up in, well, at least I'm not that guy, sitting with Imperial Knights.
Okay.
A lot of stuff needed fixing after the fact. A lot of stuff in Tyranids got fixed over the edition. The ending state of it could be worse. I'd say it's probably overall as a faction acceptable at the end, but there are so many problems with the initial codex of this thing. Like, how do you feel about your monsters without all the errata to fix them up, guys?
Yeah, I was just gonna say there's some problems with like the actual balance overall internally and in the game was like you didn't really know what you're doing, and that it was early in the edition. You didn't actually know what you were doing, but that was in addition to like the detachments being also kind of bad. Just overall, a lot of things were not particularly great with it. So yeah, at least I'm not that guy.
Moving on, it's spoiler free. Let's talk Orks.
Ooh.
It was our subject for how not to design a codex because Orks was the only one that proved they still know how to write a codex.
Yeah, kind of.
It was the exception proving the rule that all these other codices suck.
6 detachments.
Was the acceptable minimum line.
It hit the minimum line, essentially.
Importantly, they were varied, they were fun, they represented the different Ork cultures.
Honestly, just like pretty fun. There was some tweaks that could be used for some of them, but like in general, pretty solid. They were noticeably missing DACA.
There was a couple still where we were like, you could add like 3 or 4 more to this.
Well, I mean, Orks is one of those that like you were bringing up like, oh, you had a bunch for Tau. Like Orks you can think up of detachments like infinitely. It's so good. But what we got from the Codex was pretty solid. The army rule felt right.
Yeah, the why, it's always an issue because it's a temporary army rule. Temporary army rules are always iffy, but the why is also like hard baked into Orks as an identity. So representing it is very key to the faction. It's part of the fantasy. People would be very upset changing away from WA. The real answer is probably having a more permanent army rule. So maybe you do 9th edition solution of having WA do the lingering lesser effects over turns. Maybe you do like 8th edition where DACA had a static rule. Who knows?
There's a bunch of different styles to how it's done. The WA itself was necessary. Like that's your core identity as an Orc faction. So like this worked. It needed a little bit of tuning just because of like the timing stuff was not very clean, but it was all there. Everything was there. It had to get a little bit of balancing tweaks and all that stuff.
It got nerfed a bunch.
Got nerfed a couple times, yeah.
But like I said in the original episode, even if they nerf the hell out of your faction, you at least have the toys and fun. The design is there to have fun even if you end up bad.
Yeah, I think the Orc Codex just absolutely nailed. You get to have fun, and you get to kind of choose a bunch of different ways to have that fun. So I think it's S tier.
It is S tier. It is very likely the best codex of the edition or very close. There's a couple others I consider in the Orc range here.
We'll get to that. Let's not be too happy-go-lucky in this episode. Let's knock it back down.
Which of the half of the factions that are criminal would you like to pick next?
Let's take a look at Genestealer Cults.
All right. Genestealers. Eric just wrote army rule. Fucked. Which is a great description of the Genestealer's army rule in 10th edition. Doesn't matter when we are, really.
That is true. Index, fixed index, codex.
Yeah, so to break this down, we had our index army rule, which then got changed dramatically by a data slate. And then we got a codex, which just completely rewrote it again. And then they said, fuck it. And they completely rewrote it again in a data slate to a fourth iteration. But the fourth one stayed up.
And it's not bad.
It's been rebalanced. It's gotten data slate changes since. And we gave it props when they made that iteration of, hey, now you've got knobs to play with. And they've used it. And they've made good use of it.
Pretty successfully. There was a lot that still needed to be tweaked as they did it, but the design that they eventually landed on was like, oh, you can make those changes. The one in the codex? Nope. It had to be redone from scratch because it was not fixable.
So we've got that working against us as a start. Let's get into detachment talk.
There are 5, so like not good, but like not the worst that we've seen here from just a sheer number standpoint, but the actual detachments themselves.
Yeah, when we look at them, here's where the problem lies. This is the quintessential example of the thing I complained about originally with the Necron Codex of I hated the monolith detachment. I hate the idea of a detachment that is by this one model. Genestealers decided to make that their faction identity.
Kinda.
Of the 5 detachments in Genestealers, one of them was the generic index detachment.
Yeah.
That affected basically the entire range. So you've got one universal detachment that you already had as your index. The 4 added detachments, each are built around a single unit type, often 2 models.
To be fair, one of them is kind of generic because it's character based.
Yes. The last one of the list is the one that escaped what the other ones did. You have Xenocreed.
Yeah, I think that's the one.
I'm going off of memory. The gimmick was characters. Luckily, half the Genestealer range is characters, and with how leading works this edition, it ended up accidentally being broad.
Yeah.
I don't think it was purposeful. They just kind of screwed up and landed on one that was okay. But then you had Brood Brothers eating up a detachment, which is awkward because it's a soup detachment to soup and guard when it should have just had proper rules for doing that because that's part of Genestealer's identity.
Yeah, and then one that was like the mounted, and then the other one was
Muscle Beach, baby.
yeah, Muscle Beach. So like it's not great.
It's bad.
A couple of them were fine-ish, but like it was also kind of dedicated of like this is the list that you have to run because that's all you really can do to make this detachment work. So all that put together, like this codex sucked.
This codex is criminal.
Allegedly.
I will say, of all the codices we're discussing, if we're going to do a 10th versus 11th talk, we're recording this on like day 4 or 5 of them showing off the faction focuses. We haven't gotten to Genestealers yet. We did just learn that Chaos Demons gets to continue existing. Huzzah!
Woo!
Deathwatch, no comment yet. But Genestealers gets the most out of how detachments are changing in 11th. In theory.
Yes, in theory. We don't actually know. But the style of here's a couple of smaller, more focused detachments, but that you can take in addition to other ones as like, okay, that's part of your army. Now you have the other stuff that'll work with a different detachment. So you're not fully shoehorned into. This is like your only option for your list.
Yeah. And I think, again, this is very hopeful given the track record of this company.
Yeah.
But I think if every one of these codices, if they figured it out, they're talking about adding like +3 detachments to everybody that are more specific, that are like more niche Genestealer like detachments. Okay, if they're doing that and everyone gets like 10 detachments per codex minimum, a lot of them are 2 points or 1 points. A couple of them can be the 3-pointer. You can only play this at 2K and you can't take anything else. It's real strong. I almost feel like the correct correct answer is they never design a 3-point detachment. It only exists as a punishment tier in balance of, guys, this was too strong, it's going to 3 points.
I'm kind of with you on that one, but yeah, I am looking forward to seeing how they take advantage of the system. We'll see how 11th goes and what we're busy with doing other things, but yeah, maybe we'll do an episode on like reviewing that kind of stuff and like seeing what's going on. I don't know.
We'll at least be discussing all of the new and updated detachments when they come out, so you'll have at least that episode.
Yeah, but comparing them to 10, we'll see.
But yeah, I think overall this codex is a prime example of things that could work in 11th if there had been more than 5. It's still just way too low even like that. They are things that in 10th were unacceptable.
Yeah, it was pretty bad. Let's move on though. Let's hit Grey Knights.
Okay, Eric, you did a whole episode about this while I was on vacation.
It was a fun episode.
Fun's a word.
Well, I mean, it's Stefan from One Last Blade on, so yeah, it was fun.
I get to see Stefan this month, by the way. I'm very excited.
Almost said hi. But yeah, so Grey Knights. How do I actually want to go about this?
Okay, so I, having listened to Eric and Stefan basically lose their love over the course of an episode, having watched that, I thought Eric was going to go for criminal. I thought he was going to do it. But we reviewed before this episode and argued with each other, and Eric can take it from here with the logic of how he ended up.
All right, so starting, they have 5 detachments. Again, it's not enough to be like, yay, but it's not the worst.
I would say at this point, we are stuck with at best acceptable, unless we have like real strong arguments above this.
Yeah, the army rule itself, I would have preferred something psychic, but
You would have preferred Thousand Suns.
yeah, but like this does work. It is fun.
I think it gets draining,
Sure.
but I'm the one playing against you.
That's fair. The detachments like themselves are honestly kind of interesting because they do like different things. You get to choose how you want to actually like play and focus, but also aren't completely shoehorning you into different things. Like you can still play the rest of the army, primarily because the army rule just kind of like lets you cheat because you get to play the game in a victory point fashion. But like they do work pretty well.
It has what some people might argue are too niche of focuses. However, one of those niches is Terminators, which in Space Marines sounds niche, where you have 120 data sheets and only like 3 of them are Terminators.
But like that's what we're doing in Grey Knights.
Exactly.
That's why I'm here.
Yeah, when we get to Thousand Suns, I'm going to make fun of the vehicle detachment because that's not the identity of Thousand Sun. But Grey Knights, half of your characters are vehicles. So that one also makes sense.
So like they are focused, but they're also not. Or like if they are, they're how you want to play anyways.
Yeah, they're deceptively broad for your range.
Which again, I mean that does matter. The range is not massive. So you have to keep that in mind a little bit. They did do some rebalancing. So like Paladins, very fun, very exciting. They got to do some new work. They did miss a few things. There's no anti-tank, so some of that rebalancing could have been fine-tuned a little bit.
There are no hammers.
There are no hammers.
You are not the hammer.
The detachments themselves are unexciting is what I have in the show notes to remind myself. I think Stefan was the one that brought it up and he was like, this feels like a codex that was written early into the edition and then was just delayed 2 years before they released it because it's so safe. It's so there.
Yep, I 100% agree with that take. The Grey Knights Codex, it's not that it is actively bad, it is that it is it looks like a boring early Codex rush job.
Yeah. And normally that would be like, oh, I'm kind of ripping it apart and then defending why it's kind of okay.
But we're in 10th, baby.
But we're in 10th and there's a little section in there that's on the 10th curve. And I think Grey Knights are acceptable on the 10th curve.
Yeah, it's a little sad to say it, but Eric actually argued it there. And once he got it there, I was like, he's right. In the grand scheme of things, you can do a lot worse than Grey Knights, sadly, which is not great because I know there's a lot of upset Grey Knight players right now.
There are, and rightfully so, I think, for a lot of reasons.
There are going to be ones who want to put it in criminal just for the lack of proper psychic rules that Thousand Suns got. It's a slap in the face, and I get it.
And that's why when you originally brought up, like, oh, Eric's going to put it in criminal, I was like, I could argue that. I absolutely could. But, like, we're in 10.
I think one of my biggest arguments against the Codex is the Purifier detachment that was the Grotmus detachment.
Yeah, Warpbane.
It was one of the more fun little splash one-off detachments. Great one-point detachment, right?
Yeah.
Talking in 11th terms. Assuming it will be 1 point, we'll find out. Or that it still exists, we'll find out.
We'll see.
But things like that are missing missing in this codex.
Yeah, if that was like integrated into the codex, it would have had this like uplifting feeling of like, ooh, there's something fun there.
The fact that there's the Librarius Conclave detachment in one of the literal 40 detachment Space Marines have access to.
Fuck off. Don't even, man. I don't want to think about that detachment.
Yeah, there are things that I get people who want to put it down in criminal, and you can. Although I will remind you that our tier lists are objective, correct. If you disagree, it is a fault with your logic, never ours.
That's just the way it is.
Grey Knights, I think, is just it's the begrudging acceptable, where it's like logically it sits here, but emotionally it's in criminal.
Yeah. No, that's absolutely true. 100%. So where do we want to move from there, though?
We're discussing power armor, so let's keep discussing power armor. Let's do sisters.
Okay. I was like...
You could feel the bait and switch coming. You knew it was coming.
I just wasn't sure which way we were going. Maybe it was chaos.
All right, sisters.
I love how we're both like, how the fuck do we talk about this? Because
our experience is low. A lot of my experience is bricky bitching.
Yeah.
For the record, having done more research on them again, good lord was he right. This is a painful faction to look at in 10th edition. I am sorry, sisters players.
Yeah. The Codex doesn't start strong. It's only got 4 detachments. To be fair, they hit like the core parts of the army, but like there's so much more design space possibilities than just 4 detachments for this faction.
And the frustrating part is sisters got a Grotmist detachment because everyone did. So it went up to 5.
Yeah.
And then it never got another detachment again.
No.
Space Marines has 40. 4 10s.
Wow. This actually, we brought it up last weekend when we were meeting up, and you were like, yeah, Sisters only has like 4 detachments. Like, nah, it's got 5. Come on. And like, it does, but like, only technically with that Grotmist one. And that doesn't feel right.
Considering that this is a large faction, like it's important in the lore. It has lore. It has whole book series. It has a bunch of named characters who are important. Like, it is a major player.
It very much is. I can understand that, like, as a faction, Sisters is a more focused faction. It doesn't have clear, obvious, like, prongs that, like, Orks would have or whatever. But there still are, like, obvious sections. And there's also just a lot of base design that you can look at for an army in general that are missing.
Yeah, I think Sisters, from a detachment standpoint, the 4 that are in the Codex only kinda cover about 60 to 70% of core concepts.
Yeah.
I think it has no good flare detachments whatsoever. It's missing what I would say with 11th we would call the new 1-pointer detachments, right? We haven't seen those yet. Between us recording this and you listening to this, there is the Sisters faction focus. We don't know what it is yet, but I know it's coming.
And there's an expectation of what a 1-point would actually look like, and like that's the flare, that's the ooh.
None of that is here. There's no love. It has the extra frustration of army rule. Miracle dice are amazing. Fun army rule, cool, great identity. Everyone can think of the Sisters army rule being miracle dice. It had to get reworked. So your army rule is also a paperweight in this codex.
It wasn't immediate.
It was more of a nerf than total rework. It's frustrating because this codex I have extra hatred for because Index Sisters were a bit more elite. The codex came out and they became Girl Guard.
Kind of, yeah.
Dime a dozen, super cheap, flood the board like Tyranids.
It wasn't quite that bad, but it was close and it felt worse because that's not how the faction should play. And so like they ate a bunch of nerfs. Some of them rightfully so, but maybe a little too much.
Some of them, even if they were okay nerfs, they killed what little flavor was left.
Yeah, I do think part of that is because as awesome as the miracle dice are and as fundamental as they are, and like they should be the army rule, the way that they've been implemented originally here is just kind of difficult to balance. And so like they just didn't have as many knobs to turn to actually like bring it into a good spot without ruining a bunch of the units themselves. So like, yeah, I'm not completely sold on that army rule.
But to stop beating around the bush, yes, this is going in criminal.
Okay.
4 detachments. The worst part being like 4 detachments and they only ever got the 5th. and sisters is so important. It is such a slap in the face. The treatment of the faction over the edition is criminal.
Yeah, that's not what like this episode's necessarily about.
No, again, like there are bad codices that are factions that ended up pretty happy by the end of the edition and were well treated later. This is the example of the whole way through, just the whole edition getting beat up left and right.
Yeah, hopefully 11th is gonna fix things there. But let's move on. Let's take a look at Votann.
Okay. Votann is a weird one.
Yeah.
It's hard. So Votann got the treatment Death Guard did, where they had to redo the army rule come the Codex because the initial army rule was terrible.
It wasn't great. It had thematic fun to it, I guess.
So shout out to past Brad, you damn genius you. I found in an old episode where I even mentioned that Votann, they got their first army rule back in 9th edition and how you don't even have to carry it over into future editions because like, it's not like the WA, right?
Right.
It's here's a new faction. They have like 3 or 4 main plot things you could talk about that are like here is a way to summarize them in only a few words. Like you go with like, oh, they hold grudges. Oh, they're corporate driven capitalists. Oh, they have the Votann, the namesake being the supercomputers that run their society. They're miners, so they like mining stuff. So you've got different aspects you can focus on to make an army rule.
The Hollywood aesthetic hasn't really been solidified yet.
Correct.
There's a few options.
So with the index, we got the grudge system, and the index had the problems with grudge system. When they came to the Codex, they were like, all right, shift lanes, let's focus on the yield points. The fact that we're playing with the mining capitalist stuff.
One, get a better name. That one sucks. But let's move on from that.
I've heard worse.
Sure.
You could have pain tokens.
Yeah. But like, so the yield system is not bad.
It's divisive. I'm aware, Votann players. Some of you are like, I like it better than grudge. Other ones are like, I hate the yield points.
It has obvious flaws, but like at the same time it kind of feels fun and thematic, so like maybe you can overlook them.
I do feel like one of the telling things is the non-codex detachment playing with making yield points work differently tells you that they were not happy with how it turned out in the codex.
Yeah,
it's not like the whole idea is terrible, it's that the implementation was not great.
Yeah, I think that things like that detachment show, oh, we can continue to iterate and figure out where we're actually going to land.
But once again, if yield points are gone next edition and it's a third thing and it's about the Votann being supercomputers that are helping run the society and we go with that angle, cool, it doesn't matter. It's not like there's enough of a history of one of these specific angles for it to be like a must-have. It's a lot like Space Marines, where Oath of Moment came out of left field this edition as the army rule replacing doctrines from the last 2 editions. Should it have? No, but that's a different discussion.
So generally fine with the army rule here. The detachments, there were 5 of them. A couple of them were fairly generic, which it's good to have a couple generic ones.
But it was only a couple.
And the ones that were not, all right, we've got the one that's just Berserks.
That one is my standout. This is unacceptable writing. This is a single unit subfaction. This detachment affects 1 unit, Berserks. And it does it in one of the worst ways possible too. If you're playing this detachment, Berserks are battle line. Go buy more. When this detachment stops existing next edition, you own too many Berserks now.
Yeah, I think those detachments are kind of neat, but as like the 10th, 11th, once we've got a bunch of detachments and it's like, here's just a little bit of flair that we're just tossing out there. You don't have to do it. You have no actual like, oh, I'm going to go out, run out and buy a bunch. The only reason you would do that is because you're already going to buy a bunch of Berserks and you just needed an excuse.
They work in 2 examples. Number 1 is giving you access to something like Harlequins.
Sure.
Where, should they be their own codex? Yes. Are they their own codex? No. So because they're stuck in Eldar, and you don't want Eldar to have Harlequins as battle line, then the detachments that are, I'm actually playing Harlequins, they just didn't give me a damn codex, then when you're playing those, you get access to your proper battle line unit. It is active now. The other one is to swap prongs. That's something like, again, going with Eldar, making doing Wraith's battle line, because there are people who own a hilarious illegal number of Wraiths because they only like Wraiths, because it's a very large, very unique aesthetic faction that has all over the place. We've discussed this in previous episodes recently. You can like the larger factions, only a subset of them. So in cases like that, it's okay. Something like Guard with Tempestus having a huge focus on only one unit there, when it's like, okay, Tempestus is its own like sub thing. Those are okay. What's not okay is when it's literally just one random unit out of your 10 units because we didn't finish this faction.
It is pretty obvious that like it's because they didn't finish the rest of the units in the faction. So not particularly great.
I think it pulls it down from what I would say is acceptable on the 10 curve down to, well, at least I'm not that guy.
I think that's fair.
Because there's just problems. It's what would barely, if there weren't these problems, it would be like barely acceptable for 10th edition. It doesn't pass the line though.
No, but at the same time, like these are not so egregious of a problem that it's like criminal.
No, it's not criminal. Again, even there are detachments that don't look that encompassing, like with Grey Knights, you've got a transport detachment, which normally I would make fun of if it's outside of your identity. But like half of their units are transports and the guys that go in transports. It's okay with things like that. It's okay if Drukhari has a transport detachment. That's a major part of their identity.
Yeah, that's why a good portion of the players are playing it. So that makes sense. And you should have that as a detachment, really.
Yeah, that's not holding it back, but like the Berserks is the prime example of without that detachment, which is my least favorite type of detachment possible, you're down to 4.
It could be worse.
And it's weird because in the grand scheme of things, Votann over the edition, I would say is sitting in acceptable. Like this is an example of where the Codex does not match where the faction actually ended up in the grand scheme of things. I think they have risen over the edition in how good the faction feels.
Yeah. I mean, I think most factions got better. Not necessarily all of them, I'm going to say, but in general, I think that things got better.
All right, we're partway through the discussion. Should we rip off the Band-Aid and we should talk about 15 different men in power armor?
I was just going to say, I think we've held it off long enough. It's Space Marines time.
All right. Codex Space Marines only had 7 detachments. My God, so conservative. When Space Marines got 7 detachments, it was a little bit of a red flag for the edition.
It was kind of concerning.
Because they're the favorite child by a long shot. They always get more toys than everybody else, more frequently than everybody else, and get toys because other people got toys and they have to be told they're the favorite child.
So like 7 is not a big number.
7 is an acceptable number. It's about the number we were kind of hoping that most factions would end up with, was like 8-ish, somewhere in there. Space Marines getting 7 kind of showed us where this edition was going to go.
But like the detachments themselves are fine.
They mostly run the gamut of the different type of Space Marines. They attempt to do the correct thing of let's show all of our flavors for this faction. We'll do it in big broad strokes, try to hit them all.
And they did pretty broad strokes, which is good.
They were trying to move away from this is the White Scars detachment, and instead it's like this is the go fast type of Space Marine detachment. Much more your guys friendly.
Which is cool.
Love that part of the design. From a army rule standpoint, it required a lot of work over the edition, partly because of how Space Marines is. The fact that Space Marines is so bloated.
The way you said that is just like so disappointed in the way you are.
Yeah. Why are you this way?
Yeah, exactly.
So Space Marines has unique challenges that come with being the favorite pay pig.
Well, I mean, and just, having your sub factions essentially be entire factions.
So I can't hold too much against Space Marines for the changes to the army rule that happened because of the problem with Space Marines being a bloated mess and them having 500 variants who all have to be a special snowflake.
So it's one of those that, like, realistically, there's nothing wrong with this codex from how we're looking at it.
No, that's the thing is this codex actually good.
Yeah.
Now, you could argue, balance-wise, how do you like Gladius or Gladius or however we're pronouncing it?
Internal balance is in the dumpster.
You could argue this is because you made Oath of Moment the army rule, took away doctrines, and then you made the doctrine detachment.
Yeah, you could argue that, couldn't you? So, yeah, it's not S tier. It has a little bit too much baggage. Things aren't quite as clean, but it is still actually good.
Yeah. Now, note, I am not talking about the 40 detachments you can play an intercessor in.
They got a couple more than what was originally released in the codex. Some of them, Grotmus, but others are actual like factions on their own.
My favorite example being Space Marines who have no relevance in the current released book got another 2 detachments. Why? Because someone else was getting attention. So we got up to around 40 detachments at the end of the edition here.
So do we want to go right into at least one of the...
We should do them all. Let's keep talking Space Marines, because while I think Codex Space Marines was actually good, decent book for $60, has a bunch in it. It was mostly made with love. They have all of their special snowflakes who got various levels of love. So let's talk about the supplements.
Which, reminder, they're not like full codex, so we're not like ranking them on the same level of being a full codex.
These are $35 add-ons to your codex, like a certain faction should have been. These are just to splash an extra 20-ish units, you know, the size of most of the factions in the game, and then like another 3 detachments on top of them, which is most of the codices in this game. But all of those have to pay $60 for that. That's weird.
Yeah. So, I mean, it is one of those, like, 3 is perfectly fine as a supplement. Which one do we want to start with, though?
Let's talk Space Wolves.
Ooh.
They came out last of the bunch, if I'm remembering the order right.
Sure. They had, honestly, some pretty unique detachments.
I love the thematic saga system. Very cool to do.
I particularly enjoy them because, like, not only are they, like, thematic from lore or whatever, but, like, they're interestingly thematic in gameplay as well. So when you can hit both, that's great.
They show that detachments can experiment. What a detachment gives you can vary. By giving you the sagas as your rule, you're getting something more than just advance and charge.
Yeah.
You're getting like a whole story concept as an additional rule. Very cool. 10 out of 10 game design. Very, very good. Balance-wise, I am aware that Space Wolves players are the moldingest bunch here and are like, but we just play Glanius.
And yeah, but that's not the fault of this supplement.
Yeah. Or the advance and charge one, the White Scars one.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think it's, what, actually good, right?
I think it's actually good. From a sheer design standpoint, as an adder, to give you a nice flavorful boost to your codex that is about your guys. If you like Space Wolves, then this did what it's supposed to do.
Yeah.
Honestly, I could argue that Harlequins could use this type of book. That would be a full-on adder to the Aeldari book to let you play thematic Harlequins a few different ways. It doesn't need to be a full giant codex.
I think with their current range, this is a good way to do it.
We'd both rather the range expand, but I mean,
yeah.
I'm working with the limits of I got given $0 of budget. What do I do?
I think that having something like this would be pretty cool.
You know what I wouldn't want though?
Dark Angels?
Yeah, let's talk about Dark Angels. $35 book and somehow criminal.
Fucking in the trash.
You got 3 detachments, one of which is a garbage battle shock detachment.
You got 1 detachment.
The Deathwing detachment does its job.
It's the only one. Those other 2 are not real.
The Ravenwing detachment could do a job if the Ravenwing existed in model form.
Yeah, if they're not all Legends models.
Look, you can make your Outriders be nice and battle line.
And still shit.
You bought Outriders, you idiot.
Yeah. Man, this is just bad.
Yeah, I cannot defend this Codex supplement. It is not worth. Probably the worst written of the bunch. And it does show that there was a whole gamut of where the Space Marine supplements ended up.
It was also one of those that, like, the extra Grotmus detachments are like, oh, we can fix the mistake that we made. So
yes, they tried 2 more times to fix Dark Angels.
yeah.
But let's do Blood Angels. Blood Angels has an issue here, which is it's tied to the release of what is, by most people's metric, the ugliest model of the edition.
Yeah, I think most people would agree.
The Sanguinary Guard kit is a crime, and that belongs in Criminal. However, it's not the Codex.
No.
Looking at it as a way to staple Blood Angels onto Space Marines, it does about what you should expect. Yes, it's mostly the Index detachment, which is very safe and is just the Khorne detachment that Blood Angels always has of charge, get stronger. But they got the cool Death Company detachment in addition, which is pretty nice.
And the jump pack one, Uppy Downy, that's just good fun.
The jump pack one might have hit a little harder if Sanguinary Guard's refresh hadn't flopped so bad.
Yeah, that did put a bit of a damper on that particular detachment.
So I do think that on the 10th curve, this is an acceptable supplement. Is it as good as Space Wolves? No. Is it criminal like Dark Angels? Also no. It's just acceptable.
Yeah. That's fair. What do we got next?
Let's do Black Templars real quick to get them out of the way.
No, I thought we were gonna forget about them.
Basically what I said for Blood Angels, except for worse at all of it. I think it's, well, at least I'm not that guy. Black Templars got the 3 detachments, none of which are really anything to write home about. One of which is just the index detachment, which is the only one of any real note. The other 2 are just kind of shit.
Yeah, basically.
It's not as bad as Dark Angels, because like they all do attempt to be flavorful, and there's only really one note in Black Templars as flavor, so you can't argue like you can with Dark Angels that there should be more.
And there's also the aspect of like you can't just make clear generic thing because you have all of the Space Marine detachments. So like it has to be kind of unique and interesting and like flavored towards. It's not the worst, but
I could see some of you arguing for criminal. I could see some of you arguing for acceptable. I'm putting it, splitting the difference down the middle there.
I think that's safe.
Now, there is one more type of Space Marine to talk about, which GW this week dodged talking about. For an hour straight, they did not mention the Deathwatch once. I sat through that whole video wondering if they were going to bring up the elephant in the room. They dodged though. Fuck out of it.
So, did not finish, huh?
Codex Supplement Deathwatch. Things that don't exist.
That's what that tier is for.
So did not finish. Deathwatch got Harlequinsed.
Ooh, but yeah, you're not wrong. And I'm not sure that there's any expectation for the new edition to change that.
I still stick with, let's talk about them next. I still stick with Imperial Agents, if they had been done right, would have made everybody happy.
On paper, from an idea aspect, has so much going for it.
Let's talk about this for a moment, about execution versus idea. Imperial Agents, $60 codex. Should it have been a $35 add-on? Yes, because every Imperium faction can soup these in? Yeah. That's literally what codex supplements are for.
Kinda, yeah.
Should it be $0 because rules should be free? Yes, but we're dealing with the context of this episode.
But like, especially looking at the army rule that you gave, that's not an army rule. That is soup potential. You're not a real codex.
Yeah, army rule, non-existent. The army rule is here's how you soup these, idiot, which is literally the point of a supplement.
Here's how you play other factions. Great, but what about this one?
So, not a faction. And then we've got the problem of what happened in Deathwatch this edition is they did the monkey paw, where I said, man, Deathwatch would go from something that I give 0 shits about to being pretty cool if they really played up the Inquisition aspect of them and made it where like they got a bunch of Inquisition stuff and they were more an in-between between Space Marines and Inquisition. They felt flavorful then. Instead, they heard, man, Deathwatch would be really cool if it was 2 units in Imperial Agents as a faction.
Yeah.
What if we say you can no longer take generic Space Marines at all, which is 95% of what you have, and you are only allowed to take these 2 kits that make up your entire range. And now you're part of Imperial Agents, which is a faction with no army rule, and you are one detachment of it. This is like how to sculpt the worst implementation of a good idea ever conceived.
Because like, it is good to have this soup potential, like here's how you do this, and like, hey, the Inquisition is still a thing, so we can have like flavoring towards that, and we can like put it all together, but not in this way.
So, needless to say, Imperial Agents as it stands is criminal,
Yeah.
allegedly. I would say there are a couple different solutions here. You could make it where Deathwatch is in here properly, and like Space Marines is your core codex as Deathwatch, and now you play with this supplement on your Space Marines, and you will get access to all of your core Space Marines as Deathwatch, and all of your Deathwatch exclusive stuff, and all of your Inquisition stuff to go with them, so that you can be the coolest Space Marine out there hunting all the Xenos. That would be a cool solution. Alternatively, lean into this as a faction, which I have mixed opinions on, but I know there are people who would love this. Of all of your weird parts that don't make up a whole army, you pull Deathwatch out of it in this case and leave them as their own supplement.
Yeah.
But you make this its own army that is entirely unique, that is filled with all of your odd jobs, your Navy breachers next to your rogue trader, next to your Inquisitor, and make it all make sense and have some combined arms army rule that properly makes them feel cool together and gives them buffs based on who else is there, who knows what. Really lean into it.
I think that that's like one of the prime things is those are really the 2 options to make this work, and they chose the center of those two options.
No, they didn't choose the center. They tied their shoelaces together and fell on their face instead of trying the center. They tried nothing.
So yeah, this codex is not good.
Now that's the understatement of the edition.
I don't know what they're gonna do for the next edition, but it'd be interesting to see.
Yeah. Deathwatch hopes it's the version where Deathwatch continues existing, because yikes on the Space Marine faction focus this week, guys.
Yeah.
While we're here and did not finish, hello, my faction, Chaos Demons.
But there's hope.
There's fruit on the bottom and hope on top. Chaos Demons got their faction focus today with CSM, and I was wondering, with those two being piled together, if I was about to hear Demons is gone. We did not.
No.
Demons will still exist. They still get extra detachments for the edition start. It sounds like we're going to keep our index and then have these little one-pointers to accent it with. I don't get the vibe that we're keeping our Grotmist detachments, which is very sad because they were very nice. I kind of hope those Grotmist detachments get pushed to the 4 God Codices, and those Codices get more fleshed out and stop being Codex Death Guard with a soup detachment and start being Codex Nurgle, and you can play any combination of pure mortals to pure demons to anything in between by playing with this codex. Ideal world still, we'll see. But for right now, it sounds like we get to continue existing, but we went all of 10th edition with no codex, which honestly, in the grand scheme of things, is better than Criminal Tier at least, because it was free.
Yeah, it could have been worse.
We ended up with 5 detachments, of which at least 3 are playable. That's more than most factions.
Kinda. Still far less than what's design space possible, but could be worse. We still have a bunch left, right?
We do.
I mean, we're talking about it. Chaos Space Marines.
All right, CSM. CSM in 9th edition, to go back in time 3 years, had one of the last codices, but also one of the best. It exemplified 9th edition's design. It was phenomenal, to say the least. Was it the strongest one of the edition? No, but it was probably the funnest one. Chaos Space Marines in 10th edition. Keep winning.
That was pretty good.
You got 8 detachments in your codex. The actual record number in this edition only tied by one other faction. And you're not a soup faction where you lost multiple detachments to being 4 factions in a trench coat.
You got actual, like, a good mix of different options and hit the primary objectives for all the different, like, core gameplay styles for CSM.
Ignoring the balance of the faction one way or the other, the codex worked for the whole edition. It was solid. It gave you flavorful ways to play, no matter how they tend to be balance-wise between each other. It was just fun.
I quite like the army rule. The dark packs are fun to me.
I still argue I would like a flip-flop on certain things, but it's fine. But yes, it is a good army rule. Solid overall. Nothing is wrong with this. It continues to be the best of 10th edition, just like it was the best of 9th edition. I think it is sitting right next to Orks in S tier, possibly the best codex of the entire edition.
It is actually possible. As much as I'm like, nah, it's Orks. There's a little bias.
I think there's actually more argument for CSM than Orks, because Orks got more touches over the edition. Not that CSM was guilt-free either, but Orks had some serious problems.
I was like, hold on there. But I understand what you're saying. Either way, they're both top tier, S tier, as it were, and like really do show that like there was quite a bit of potential in this edition to make good codexes.
Yeah. They even got more later. Like, you could keep going. We've proven this. Everyone can do good. We can do this. We can have amazing Codices in 11th edition, filled to the brim with options, letting you have complexity before the game, where you get to choose how you want to play, and then in the game it's still streamlined and it doesn't have all of the bloat the 9th had, which does have issues, I know, even though I loved it.
Yeah.
There is hope. The hope is CSM shaped, as it keeps on being for some reason.
All right. Well, let's move on.
All right, let's talk about a tangential aside here with the other former S rank from 9th edition, which is Custodes. In 9th, in my opinion, you had one of the best codices. In 10th, you had one of the absolute worst. You started with 4 detachments. Not a great number. You could argue it's a smaller range, so maybe.
It is a smaller range, but it's also like it's got a couple obvious like prongs to it, so it's not like it's not great.
Your army rule, not great. Still hate katas.
It's fine. fine.
It was a problem in 9th too. It was the one weak point in that whole codex. This one's filled with them. Or rather, it's filled with nothing.
I was like, I don't know, filled with them is right, because there ain't shit here.
And the ironic part, we have 4 detachments. And of these 4, one of them is Null Maidens, which is a Sisters of Silence detachment. And you would think that this is like a throw off, we have to include this, it'll be the flavorful one. When this codex launched, ironically, that was the only playable detachment out of the 4.
That was a little weird. But it is good that that detachment existed. They needed something to show off that part of the army.
But surely if they're doing that, then we've got a Dread detachment, since you have cool Forge World Dreads that you have access to. Oh, because we have the internal weird thing between the different parts of GW. They don't like drawing focus to that in the codex. So no, there was no Dread detachment in the Telemon and Contemptor Dread Knight faction.
It's just such a miss. There is the Forge World sized concern in the corner of oh my god, what's gonna happen? But you kept them in the codex. Give them a fucking detachment. It was unacceptable.
So to point this out, you had 4 detachments. One was the Null Maiden, one was Talons of the Emperor, which was your index detachment. Then we had Shield Host and Auric Champions, which should have been your other varieties. Both of these needed considerable errata to fix them later. Auric Champions used to only work on the character model, which I said back when we first did the discussion on this, would have been fine if you made Custodes characters into Giga Chad, take on a whole army at once things. If it was transforming a Custodian into a knight.
Maybe not quite that, but yes. And so it had some interesting idea. Extremely poor execution though.
Yeah, so instead the correct answer for them was to just change it so it affected that whole unit that was being led by the character.
Yeah, sure. It doesn't feel the same, but that's fine.
Shield Host only worked once per game.
I had completely forgot about that. You brought that to the light and I was like, nah, ain't no way. Looking it up again, yeah, that's crazy. That's terrible.
They errated it to work every battle round. And it's okay, it's now an option.
Insane. The more you look at this codex, the more you realize it's so bad.
As written, it was criminal. So there we go. We have one more criminal up for How the Mighty Have Fallen, from S tier, one of the best codices of 9th, to criminal in 10th.
All right, but let's try and be a little bit more positive this episode. I feel like it's kind of down. How about Thousand Suns?
Thousand Suns is a fascinating one. So we did a review with Slam Sector when it first came out as a hot takes of reading it for the first time and seeing what we had access to. And I liked it, but had flaws with it.
I'm just going to say right now before you continue going on, if it's in the criminal, ending this fucking show because you have psychic.
No.
We're done.
So, arguments against the Thousand Suns Codex. Let's start with the negative. We only had 5 detachments.
Well, 4 and kind of -1 because you have the soup.
Yeah, so we're at 4 detachments. We had 6 in Death Guard, we had 6 in EC. Of those 4 detachments, one of them is a vehicle detachment. Thousand Suns, the famous vehicle drivers. That's what we're known for.
Yeah, with all of your dreads.
Yeah, with all of our psychic dreads.
Honestly, that vehicle detachment particularly funny for that.
It's bad. So there's functionally in this codex 3 detachments. We did get the 4th one back due to errata later, but it doesn't count. That's rough. However, our army rule.
You had a bunch of Zongors.
The Zongor is actually a boon. I think we were all on the same page. We all thought we were going to be the one with the hot take of liking the Zongors and the mutation detachment most, and we all loved it. That's a good detachment design. That's what you want to see is let's show off different flavors of this faction. And then you get one where you're like, I haven't had this taste before. This is good. That's what you want to see out of a detachment in a codex. They should be filled with those. That's a highlight. But most important of all, we kept our army rule being you have access to psychic, get fucked Grey Knights. And that does a lot of legwork.
I mean, not just it feels bad to me because I play Grey Knights, but it's not just Grey Knights. There are other other factions that used to have psychic as well.
Eldar, get bent.
Yeah, right? Clearly, they have no psychic abilities. Not a thing. Don't understand those.
Orks, the way that everything in your army works, technically being held up by the fact that you're an entirely psychic race, not important.
Nah. Definitely not a thing.
Tyranids, the famous, everything has psychic weight. The shadow in the warp is literally how massive your hive mind's presence is within the warp. Screw your psychic.
Nah, it's just some shadows. So the way that they implemented it is, I mean, it's nothing like it used to be.
It's an acceptable way to backport it into the game to get us something back. Would I like proper psychic where we roll dice and we go, oh shit, perils, my brain explodes? I'd love to have it back.
Or just like more options for your psychic spells, specifically for Thousand Suns here, but this was fine.
It's quite the downgrade from 9th edition where we had access to 18 spells.
But like limitations exist, and so like this is a fine implementation, and it shows like, okay, they can do that.
Yeah, I have to say that does a lot of the legwork. It helps that Thousand Suns were not the biggest range, let's be honest. It's small, much like Grey Knights. So you don't have that many varieties that need to be shown off, and we got a few less than I would like, but it was an acceptable number. Combined with the fact that we got to keep a lot of the flavor the rest of the game lost moving into 10th, I have to move it all the way up to actually good, even with the notable downsides. If it didn't have those downsides, if this was a 6-7 good detachment codex, this would be S tier.
Yeah, 6-7, Brad.
Oh, God damn it. Well, I already know the comments.
Yeah, no, I'm totally with you. I think it is actually good. And another call out, Magnus, not trash.
Yeah, relevant the whole edition. Very good, the whole edition. Some would argue slightly too good when they would rather not take him or Ahriman, and one of them was usually correct to take. Honestly, Mortarion, great example in Death Guard. Another one where he has been acceptable the entire edition to take or leave behind as you so choose. Handling the big models well.
Not every faction did that. We'll get to World Eaters.
Emperor's Children.
Yeah, but like Thousand Suns has a lot of good stuff to it. It's just not quite there.
It falls just short, a little shorter than Death Guard fell. But like, there was a world where there was an S tier codex out of this. We were shy, but only shy.
Yeah, like 2 detachments, one of them being some type of like, big brain doing weird stuff. And I think it's there.
If each of the detachments had also given you an extra ritual, like we saw previously with a good design of Space Wolves giving sagas as your rule. If the detachments had given an extra Cabal ritual. This is the type of stuff where this builds up that detachments can be more than the very vanilla ice cream they were. There's these little ways we could have pushed. It's so close to S, but it's just actually just good. Speaking of factions that don't have great Primarchs, Emperor's Children. Let's go back to your noise boys.
Okay, this is a newer faction.
You are brand new. We would say you are only half born at this point.
So there might be some growing pains there. Not expecting it to be S tier, and that's okay.
It'd be crazy if they launched a new faction and it was S tier out the gate, no qualms.
Yeah.
I don't think they've ever done it.
And the fact that this range is still kind of small is not happening in this edition. But we did have 6 detachments. Obviously, one of them being the Demon Soup. And they were a pretty decent mix. You got to do the different things that were available in Emperor's Children.
Yeah, Coterie is like the slam dunk. Even if it wasn't strong, which it's brokenly strong, but like even if that wasn't the case, it would still be like the flavor win that everyone really liked. And there's like a couple others that are arguable in there.
Even the ones that are like kind of weaker.
Yeah, they at least have flavor though.
They still fit. And they're like, yes, all of these detachments are pretty solid. The army rule, I mean, it's fun.
It's okay.
It hits the expectation.
I like the little add-ons to it that make it a little more flavorful EC.
Yeah, and I mean, it also just adds a little bit of gameplay to it, kind of thing. It's not the most boring. You gotta actually make some decisions, which is nice.
But it does have issues.
It's got a couple.
Again, not the highest count of detachments. We're not going to worry too much about the balance between them, but I know that you're all going to say there's one detachment. It's functionally an index. I know.
But it's one of those that like the other ones are kind of interesting. You can play them.
There was an attempt. They were trying.
The biggest problem
is the biggest problem. He's very large. Or are you not talking about Fulgrim?
That is essentially the biggest problem. I'm trying to figure out how to phrase it. Because, like, Magnus did great, and you were like, yeah, but sometimes people weren't happy about it. But he wasn't an auto-include at every moment of the game, like,
Correct.
From the Codex. It was like, yes, he's good, and he does his job.
I think Mortarion was probably the best example of he was arguable the whole edition without being required.
It's particularly great when those big models that are the Mortarion is balanced and it's like, oh, these are still like, 450 points. They're big, they're scary. They're like knights, except not Chaos Knights now. Fulgrim is not great. And like 340 points or whatever it was. I think it was 380 when it was originally launched.
Eric, they gave him a whole detachment.
It's not
one of
good.
the worst detachments I've ever seen them write. It doesn't count because it's not in the Codex, but we have to point it out.
That detachment is pretty bad. But like, even if you keep knocking down the points, Fulgrim is not interesting. So like, this is one of the like major models. You don't have that many models in this range. And this is a massive miss from like core design of the unit. It failed.
Especially given this is your first impression, your start of the faction. It's undercooked to begin with. You launched with like half the model count you should have.
And there's like clear holes missing that like they should have units for, and there should be detachments around that. But it's a new faction. So like, okay, that's fine. It happens. But the big problem being that like Fulgrim was just a massive miss. And it's not just, oh, it was overpoint costed. Yeah, sure. You can make any model good if you reduce the points enough. But like, that doesn't make it fun.
That's why, speaking back to Dark Angels, they had to completely resheet the Lion because we got to the point where it was like, I don't care how cheap you make him. That sucks. No one likes him.
It's just not fun. It's not doing the thing. And so like, I can't put EC above acceptable on 10th curve. And like, that kind of feels generous, but like, it probably is, right? There's just a few things that I'm like, this is dumb.
I think it's probably right given the 10th curve includes, this is the launch of EC. You kind of get a little bit of a free pass on your first try.
Yeah.
Unless you're as bad as 9th edition World Leaders, which was holy shit bad. Little did we know that was going to be the average effort level of a 10th edition Codex.
Well, I mean, at least it wasn't quite as bad. Come on. There's still some good fun for EC.
No, that Codex was bad.
That Codex was actually... I mean, speaking of, let's move on.
World Eaters. I don't know, man. You've only got the 5 detachments. -1 because one is soup your demons. It's hard to ask for more variety in detachments because your range is so lacking.
And like, these detachments are kind of fun and like, they're solid. It's just like, I don't know, man. There's just not much to do in this range that's like actually unique and interesting.
But I don't want to put too many negative points on the Codex for the lack of range. We can mention it, we can be annoyed with it, but I don't want to dumpster it just because of that.
Sure.
So it's trying with what it's got to some extent. But like, the army rule's the Corncino. It's a fun army rule, but it's a Tzeentch army rule.
It's such a cool rule.
If there was a faction of gambling clowns...
Yeah. You could do this as a detachment in Khorne if it's changed up a decent amount to like actually be detachment scale. You could do something like that. And that could be one of those like, oh, what else do you do for world leaders? They only have so many options because of their units. Well, how about this? Sure. Like that's when we can do that kind of stuff. But like, this is not the expectation for the army rule of world leaders. It's just not.
And then on top of it, we've got Angron, who I'll argue he's not nearly done as dirty as Fulgrim was on his first try.
No.
But,
he's just rather underwhelming.
Yeah, he's not as angry Ron as we think he deserves.
Essentially, yeah.
I think it's like if Thousand Suns didn't have any of the things that made it good.
Wow.
Like, that sounded more mean than I intend.
If you take all of the good things away, that's what you're left with.
Thousand Suns, let's say, we started at acceptable. I brought you your downsides, which bring you down to, well, at least I'm not that guy. But then I showed you why it's actually good.
Right. Here's all the really cool stuff that was going on.
World Eaters, we started acceptable. We go down to, well, at least I'm not that guy because we see all the flaws.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where it's sitting.
Basically. Yeah, there's not really too much to say there.
All right, we have some Imperium left and we have some Xenos left. Let's talk Xenos for a bit. We need to talk about one of my armies. It's been too long. It's been like minutes. Luckily, I have multiple left.
Yeah, let's take a look at Necrons then.
Yes, let's look at Necrons. Necrons is a codex early in the edition that I was quoted as saying, I don't like this codex, but I feel guilty because AdMech came out at the same time. You feel bad complaining when you look over at that fucker. Like, all right, my life's bad, but at least I'm not that guy.
Right. Because, like, Necrons had 5 detachments.
Only 5, which is stupid low for Necrons, something with as much deep lore as it's got and as many varieties of model and different ways you can take the faction as it's got. It was the first sign of where 10th edition was going, and I was very upset at the time because I thought this was just an insane miss. Little did I know where we were going.
Yeah. But, like, Necrons does have a lot of models, a lot of units, and the diversity, like clear prongs to the different sections of the army. And it also, like you said, has a bunch of, like, it just has a lot of potential. So yeah, okay, 5 is kind of the bare minimum. There's so much more.
And I will say, of those 5, at least 3 of them I have no problem with. I think the Canoptic detachment is unironically fantastic. I love everything about it except it was a little bit broken.
Yeah, I was like, I don't like Canoptic.
It was a little unintentionally broken, but I love the detachment other than that.
The idea of it is pretty close.
After errata, it was fine.
Yeah.
We had our very safe index detachment, whatever. And then we had obeisance phalanx, which I think is a very cool idea for a detachment of focusing on one of the prongs that is always like the outside prong of like the Lich Guards, the Triarchs.
So, like, actual leaders of...
Yeah, basically Silent King's detachment. Dealing with the fact that Necrons, from a lore standpoint, has some complicated politics.
Yeah, it is cool.
An obeisance phalanx, I think, is a solid idea for a detachment. It's basically a character detachment in the end that also hits 2 elite units, 2.5.
It did a pretty good job, and it is very cool. I will say that not all of the detachments hit.
Yeah, so we are at 3 detachments that I think solid out of 5. However, as it was written, the Destroyer Cult detachment did not work. With half of the destroyers that existed.
Oh, it's so good. It's so brilliant.
They had to rewrite that detachment because they went oopsie. Hey, it turned out the Necron players were right. We kind of forgot about half the destroyers that we didn't legends yet. Cox shotgun.
Right. I don't think that detachment was very good and well thought out at all in any way, stratagems included.
With the fix so that it worked with all of them, it was like at acceptable. It's not like destroyers had a good detachment in 9th, so it was like, all right.
It existed.
But before that, as it stood in the codex, there's a huge mark against you. You wrote one of your detachments just missing half of the models it's supposed to be buffing.
And it isn't like, oh, it's like the entire part of the range like that. It was a smaller part of Necrons that you're missing half of already. Bad.
And then we had what at the time I thought was one of the worst written detachments they were going to make all edition of Hypercrypt Legion. Something that I use as an example often as please buy a monolith. We wrote the word monolith into your fucking rules. You will purchase the monolith. You cannot fully utilize this detachment without buying this unit.
Yeah.
Little did I know that was going to be the majority of things this edition. So at the time, I would have put this in criminal. However, we're in 10th edition, and I think over the course of the edition, we've just learned that this is acceptable on the curve.
Yeah, kind of.
It's insane. Like how much I don't like this codex. It's still better than the 9th edition Necron Codex by a mile, just because it has a functional good army rule that actually seems to be well balanced. And just stay. Don't hit. Stay. We got it. Don't fucking touch it in 11th.
I was gonna say, like, I think it might be on the lower end of the acceptable on 10th curve, but like I do think it is there because the army rule has kind of been just like figured out.
We have a core. We can work with this.
Yeah, which is good. Definitely a big point for the codex. So
yeah, Necrons, I think it's acceptable on the 10th curve. I still like this proves where we're at with this tier list versus outside of 10th edition.
Yeah, that's kind of true.
I just lectured you on how badly designed this codex is, and it's above over half of the codices.
I mean, we're already on a downswing.
Do you want to hit rock bottom?
You've got another faction that we can go further lower.
Remember, we're not counting data slates. Hello, AdMech. Goodbye, AdMech. You're in criminal. You were were the laughingstock of the early edition. You were something that parents told their children about to keep them behaving, because if they didn't behave, Santa would give you the Admech Codex. As it stood, your entire codex had 5 detachments, one of which was playable.
I mean, they did try to make like unique parts of the army do different things, I think. It was kind of hard to tell.
Here's my thoughts on the Admech Codex. Other than the Skitarii detachment in the Admech Codex, the Skitarii cohort, right?
Yeah.
Are any of the others worth 2 points? Or are they all 1 point detachments?
Well, okay. If we're going by the army rule that was as written in the Codex,
I forgot.
because that was only Skitarii.
We haven't even gotten there yet.
So, like, if we're going by that, then no, like, Skitari's the only one that you would ever play, because that's the only one that gives you your army rule, essentially. But fixed one, maybe you could play something else. It wouldn't be good, but, like, Rad Zone Corpse is cool, okay?
No, that is the meme.
It is a meme, and that's why it's cool.
That is a great example of an 11th edition 1 point detachment.
I would hope so. Like,
Granted, it deals with battle shock, so maybe in 11th it's actually much better than it was in 10th.
yeah, these detachments were not well put together. The army rule wasn't a full army rule, to a point that it warped other detachments around that army rule, purposefully leaving other parts of the army out.
It was a perfect example of what not to do. It was basically what we were lecturing in the episode where we explained the problem with 10th Codices. This is a criminal book to sell for $60. Charging money for it should be against the law in Britain. Like with all rules.
Anyway, moving on.
Let's talk about IG, the Astra Militarum.
So IG is interesting because I feel like there's been times where people absolutely hated certain parts of it so much that I feel like it might tint the glasses that you're looking at this codex through.
Yeah, Eric likes indirect fire. There are lots of people in the audience who despise indirect fire. The Guard love indirect fire. So much so, they keep getting it nerfed. Although Orks was to blame in 9th, and Tau a little.
Tau definitely had some. I mean, Aeldari also had some for this edition.
Yeah.
Really, it's not Guard's fault at all, is what I'm saying.
It's usually partially Guard's fault.
So the Codex had 5 detachments.
Which, given the size of Guard's lore,
And model count.
is up there with Sisters on how offensive 5 feels like.
It is definitely low for what you really should have and kind of expect.
It should have got, like, the Chaos Space Marines 8.
Yeah.
Like, realistically, you could go that far. The Tempestus Scion detachment was not in the Codex.
Yeah, it really wasn't. The ones that we did get, they hit the points, and I think they were kind of fun. Balance aside for what you actually chose.
Yeah, well, the most broken ones were not Codex detachments in the end. So you can't even blame the Codex for the broken detachments in Guard. Those all came later.
I do think one of the biggest selling points to me was the army rule, though. Voice of command, the orders.
Yeah, orders are just magnifique. They're like WoW, where it's like, this is so right that it's hard to touch.
Basically. I think that this is honestly better to a certain point, though, because, like, the WA is perfect, but it has problems because there's only so much you can balance. There's only so many knobs you can tweak to that ability.
Yeah.
It is what it is kind of thing. Whereas, at least for Guard, the orders here, you have a lot more potential to change things, to customize it as needed for whatever the balance is. I think they did a great job of where it was, and just the design of how it all works is clean. Honestly, this army rule is one of the best to me, which sells it quite a bit for me to want to rank this codex high.
Yeah, but we're not gonna. It still has too many problems. It can't be that good when it is so underfunded, to put it in a way.
Yes.
The detachment count is too damn low, and there are just holes.
I did have some of the rose tinted glasses myself. There's a couple of the detachments from Grotmus I thought were in the codex. So yeah, okay. I was gonna fight for it to be actually good, but it's probably just acceptable, isn't it?
I think it's acceptable. I think there will be people who want it lower, but I think as it stands, it was with Necrons on. I would be mad about it in 9th, and we were. The 9th edition
Yeah.
codex was ass. But in 10th, it's about the same, which means it's a lot better, which is horrible.
Yeah, the on 10th curve is doing a lot of work throughout this episode. But all right, let's not end on a sad note.
Oh, so we're doing Drukhari first?
So we're gonna hit Drukhari first, because this one's rough.
Because of this one, while we're on the topic, once we finish putting these last two on the list, I want to do a winners and losers.
Sure.
Where we talk about, before we get out of here, let's talk about the directions that different factions went and who the biggest winners and losers of the edition were. And maybe we can swing into some 11th talk too. But Drukhari, oh, I was so excited for this codex for the whole edition. I spent the entire time going, look, I'm bored out of my mind. I hate the index detachment for Drukhari. It's a terrible idea. It's not good at all, but at least we're going to get a really good codex because they crushed it in 9th edition. So much flavor, so much fun. Surely Drukhari will be fantastic when the codex comes out. And instead, James broke into my house, smashed open the door, waltzed in, and shat on my face while I was asleep.
I mean, you got 5 detachments. It could be worse.
That's true. We have a lot of detachments considering they murdered half of our range and we're down to like 20 units.
You get a detachment for each unit. What are you complaining about?
We're about as good as Blood Angels. We're a perfect codex supplement.
Yeah, brutal.
Yeah, so I play Covens, by the way, for anyone who doesn't have a history of this podcast. If you're a witch player, you're like, he's complaining too much. It's not great, but it's all right. We have the witch detachment. It's okay.
I mean, it's the witch detachment, which is a problem on its own.
We just got our index 2/3 of the way into the edition for only witches.
Yeah.
If you like the rest of the faction, get bent. See you next time.
It is not great when the faction that has like 3 very obvious prongs to it.
It's one of the examples of 3 prongs. It's why we use it in examples, because they are so clearly defined, or were.
And only having 5 detachments is like not good, not enough.
To point this out, you get the shitty index one-piece friendship boat.
Which, as much as you hate it, I do think it is good to have that as a detachment, and I think it does its job fine.
That's fine. We had real space raiding in 9th edition, which was this same idea, but executed well, and did much more for you.
It did do it better, but like I don't think this is as bad as you're saying it is. I think you're just salty over having to deal with it for so long.
And then we got our transport detachment, which is good and probably should have been the index detachment because that's like part of Drukhari's entire gimmick is we like transports. We don't want to touch the ground. The floor is lava. Your planet is disgusting and I don't want to be here. I just need to capture you and bring you back for torture. That would have been a fine index detachment. Good detachment, 10 out of 10, no notes. Not my ideal for me personally, but for an index, perfect. They gave us this as the oopsie accidental, okay, fine. We need to give you a different index detachment, so we'll give you this one early. So we saw that one before the codex.
Yeah.
And then we've got 3 prongs. So they made a whopping 1 detachment for each.
The witch one's fine.
The witch one is great. It's about combat drugs, and that's a witch gimmick that everyone likes. It's cool. It's flavorful. It's fun to play. All right, 10 out of 10. We've got 2 good detachments. We've got the Cabalite portion, also known as like our main prong, our vanilla. It's the most uninspired thing I've read.
Yeah, it's one of those like it does its job, and like at a certain point that prong of the army is kind of boring, I want to say, but not like
it's our vanilla. It is often the second thing someone likes. Someone either tends to like witches or covens and then is like Cabalites are cool because they're like the middle safe pick. I'm good with them too. I'll do them and my one prong I like.
Yeah,
it's rare that you like both covens and witches. They're very different aesthetically.
True. So like this works fine-ish. It would be good if there was a second detachment for them as well that went a little bit more interesting, but
maybe focused more on Blade for Hire stuff.
Yeah.
Maybe a full dedicated Incubi detachment.
Wow.
If you're going to show off a single model as a detachment, which again, I'm not thrilled with, but now that 1-pointers exist in 11th, I see more argument for them. Cool. We can have an Incubi detachment.
And like in addition to the Cabalite cartel.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Sure.
So that would have been nice to just have, you know, any detachment for that. that, considering our main named character is Drazar, who is the head of the Incubi.
We do have one more detachment, though. The one that you must be the most excited for.
I redact my statement about the least inspired detachment I've ever read.
It is not good.
We found it. It's down there with Dark Angels. Yeah, the Homunculus detachment, which is literally just the most milquetoast version of a tanky detachment I've ever seen. It is just the greater than toughness equals -1 to wound thing that like every Terminator has built in.
It is uninspiring.
Real uninspired when we're the mad scientists of the setting. Everyone else who has a mad scientist got a more inspired version of this. Or, 2 variants. Or you could have probably done 3 variants of this. Witches could have also had a second detachment easily that is not combat droids. We had multiple in 9th edition.
There is a portion of the army that doesn't have as many models in it anymore.
Yeah. So when they gave us this, they also shot one of our named characters in the face, our named Homunculus, and they shot Grotesques, also known as half of the entire range for Covens. Now granted, the official Grotesque model was grotesque. It was fine cast.
Yeah, it wasn't grotesque, like, oh wow, that's unique and interesting, and like, it's well done, I'm creeped out. No, just like old and busted.
And Drukhari players for a long time have always had different threads all over the place of people showing off their custom kit bash grotesques because there's 100 ways to make them that is not buying that original kit.
So there is some reasonable understanding on those models going away.
Nobody misses that fine cast kit. It was bad. It is well documented how much that kit was a mistake anytime someone purchased it and saw what they received. Reminder, it came in 1s and you ran them in 3s to 5s. Previously 3s.
But it was a core pillar to this entire faction for some people.
Yeah, it fulfills our Terminator role. So they removed the old model and nothing came to replace it.
Yeah.
So our 3-prong army is like 2 prongs and a broken bit.
To be fair, Drukhari is not the only faction that had models leave during this edition. It's just one of the most egregious.
Yeah. It's one of the most egregious examples, not because it's like we had so few to begin with or something like that. It was one of our 3 identities, which was already a little bit anemic on how many things we had supporting it. Drukhari is already one of the oldest ranges in the game, with a lot of the range being quite old at this point, sitting there with Grey Knights.
It's just one of those that like, we didn't bring it up for a lot of the other codexes because it didn't really matter. It sucked, but like, it doesn't really matter. It does for Drukhari though. That is a prime example of like, oh, this codex removed models that like are fundamental to actually play part of the army, and so you can't play that part of the army anymore.
Yeah, to explain this, if you play Covens, it is very difficult to field 2,000 points without going over the legal limit of any model.
Yeah.
Like you have to bring in transports and stuff to get you up to 2K. You can't run 2K of the models.
It's not a good spot. So obviously Drukhari is actually good.
So this book is criminal, and the treatment of Drukhari this edition has been. We had one of the best editions in 9th and one of the worst in 10th. I didn't even talk about what a piece of shit the new Power from Pain is.
Yeah.
Eric and I had a long argument before the episode. We're not doing that discussion. It would take an hour and a half, and this is not a Drukhari Codex review episode.
But at the very least, the implementation of the army rule in this codex is also trash.
Eric wants to defend the idea behind it, but I don't even.
I think the idea is fascinating. The implementation shown in this codex, though, got no argument. It's bad.
Yeah, please go back to 9th. Please turn back. Anyway, let's end on a high note. One of the highest notes.
We do have one more.
A for Eldar. So, Aeldari, you got 8 detachment. However, it's not CSM good, hold your applause, because you are 4 factions in a trench coat, and one of them was missing. You are Craftworld Eldar, Harlequins, Ynnari, and Corsairs. And Corsairs didn't even show up in this codex because they were sandbagging it because they were going to release Corsairs as a whole range thing at the end of the edition. That's fine.
So, like, in retrospect, that one makes sense.
Understandable.
It still is a missing part of the codex.
Little rough that Quinn's got 1 terrible detachment to represent their entire faction.
Yeah, man.
After going from 8th edition having a full codex to 9th edition having half of a codex stapled to the back of the Eldar codex to a single garbage detachment in this codex.
It's one of those that there was an expectation that was very low, and somehow this detachment is like, nah, we can go lower. It's so bad. But it does technically exist, so yay.
We can argue if the Ynnari detachment is anything but just like a index way to hover and keep it around for another edition.
Nah, I think that's exactly what it is.
What the future of Ynnari is going to even be. It's weird because it's like Ynnari is Imperial Agents, but for elves. But because it's for elves and not for humanity, it is not going to be getting an Imperial Agents Codex for us to complain about. It will be lucky to continue existing as the 3 models it is.
It would kind of make sense for like it and Harlequins to be supplement, whatever. Yeah, not great for those 2 parts of Aeldari, but I mean, that's still 6 Craft World detachments, which is pretty solid.
Exactly. We got a new army rule. This one is not because everyone hated the old army rule. This one is because everyone hated playing against the old army rule. Very different problem.
Yeah. You're not wrong.
Aeldari players were not complaining about Strands of Fate. Everyone else was.
Including the balance team. So the army rule battle focus gives you a bunch of like options. You've got the agile maneuvers, which the way that this is implemented is pretty cool. It's not an obvious miss even after like losing something extremely powerful and fun. So yeah, I think the army rule does a good job.
Yes, it is a fine replacement for a problematic rule that was causing issues. I am giving it full points. I don't think many people dislike agile maneuvers. They have had balance touches over the edition.
I was like, there was definitely some balance things that
Eldar needed balance adjustments in an edition of Warhammer 40,000. Say it ain't so.
yeah. Call the press. But in general, I do like this army rule. Helps make it easier to rebalance things once they're obviously busted. The actual detachments are generally pretty good.
Yes, they do a good job of showing the variety of the craft worlds. They do a good job of showing off the variety of the faction itself. I would argue there are still holes, just like with Orks, where like you could have kept going.
Yeah, I mean, the Aeldari range is fairly large. So yeah, there was definitely more potential. And we did get eventually, 4 or 5? I think it was 4 detachments. So like there was a lot of potential, even ignoring like more Harlequins or Ynnari. Like there were still a bunch of potential for detachments, but what we got was a pretty solid base. And especially for Aeldari, when they're constantly breaking this game, that's pretty good.
Yeah, so good army rule, solid variety, even technically including the extra detachments in air quotes that are giving you your extra factions in a trench coat, we'll say. I think it's just an S tier codex. I don't think it has any true problem with it other than balance, but so did the index, even more so.
The only real problem is the balance, and like that's not the focus here.
And we could argue again, it was still like, just like with Orks, again, still S tier. You could have kept going.
Yes.
We are grading on a 10th curve on this episode. If we were grading against a 9th, the highest codices here would have trouble hitting A tier and none of them would hit S tier.
Yeah. Our 3 S's might be A's, but as it is, I think Aeldari it's the 3rd S. I think it's lower than the other 2, but I think it is still a solid S.
I think all 3 of them, if you play this faction, you are likely happy to have gotten this codex and not anything in our bottom half here.
You got to have some fun and actually play your models and do things.
And sometimes your opponent got to have fun, but sometimes they didn't.
Yeah.
But let's end on talking about 9th versus 10th codex-wise. Who won, who lost compared to what they had before. Orks went up from being a solid to being probably equally solid, but in 10th edition context, amazing.
Yeah, no, that sounds right.
CSM stayed winning.
Which honestly is always kind of shocking to me how much care goes into CSM sometimes, at least from like this design aspect. But maybe it shouldn't shock me anymore.
Ironically, I would say Eldar shot up multiple tiers while staying identical in quality, just because the rest of the game diminished next to it.
Yeah.
Space Marines, honestly, better in 10th than 9th for a codex, just from a like design and context of its edition. Yes,
Sure.
balancing nightmare, internally speaking. Death Guard and Necrons, I think both went up huge. They were like some of our bottom tier of the edition, like worst of the whole edition. And now it's like Death Guard's pretty good from a design standpoint. And Necrons, at least we have our army rule figured out. And by the end of the edition, we're actually sitting pretty. It's just the codex itself had issues.
Yeah.
And again, we're ignoring the broken Catan problem that happened again at the end of the edition. Necrons managed to individually be broken like 4 times this edition. Like just at various points, we would get something, break it, and have to get punished later.
True. I guess on like the flip side, Tau.
Yeah, Tau went from having a pretty solid 9th edition codex to being horrid.
That was a massive drop.
Custodes and Drukhari being former S tiers, now sitting in criminal.
Yeah, those ones are brutal.
I gotta say Sisters is another one where like it wasn't great last time, but like this time's bad. Straight up bad.
True.
I will say AdMech's not as worse because again we went off design, not power level. AdMech's drop isn't as worse as you think because AdMech's design in 9th was so bloated and miserable to play that their terrible codex in 10th doesn't look that much worse than it.
Yeah, but just for like vastly different reasons. I do think 10th eventually got to a good spot for most factions.
Yes, again, most of our problem children down in criminal were fixed later. Some of them were not, but most of them were fixed later. Shout out to Demons. Consistency is key, guys. Worst codex of the edition in 9th, no codex in 10th. You fucking nailed it. You managed to stay at the bottom.
And somehow win better this time.
Yeah, somehow it's less bad than the category above you. In a weird roundabout way, because at least I didn't have to waste money on you this time.
Yeah, we'll have to see about doing some type of like comparison between like throughout 10th and then what we get for 11th.
Yeah, I guess audience wise, we'll likely cover the new detachments when they come out. Like
Yeah.
the week they come out, we'll likely be talking about them and the point system and all that. If you want to see how these codices age and see if they like reconfigure in a few months in our minds of like, wow, this codex was a better 11th edition codex than a 10th edition codex. Leave us a comment if you think that would be an interesting topic to cover of like the accidental glow up codices.
Assuming that they get better.
Assuming any get better. I assume some will.
Very optimistic after we ended with Aeldari.
But yeah, that does it for us this week. Please do the YouTube pleasantries. It would be a huge help. Make sure you're subscribed because there's going to be a bunch of important stuff coming. I don't want to tease too much, but there are very big episodes coming that you're going to want to watch.
Before we leave, though, we do have to shout out the patrons that support us enough that every month we have to shout them out. They are, the scent of sweaty sororitas socks.
Oh no. Aesiltilla's Celiac Planetary?
A dachshund.
Adrian Franca.
Alex Ossinen.
Alice Jeans.
Alan Dunn.
Amdragon.
Amists.
Andreas.
Angry Zellers bought AdMech because of Poor Hammer.
That's your problem. AOS official art shows Slanesh is uncircumcised. What?
Avidominus Nuts.
Bald is beautiful. Fuck you.
Bedlam's Nemesis.
Biggs the Purple Necron.
Black Mist Gorgon.
Blubbles 180.
Bob Lawblaw's Law Blog.
Bob Myers.
Bob Kerr.
Brad said my name was too long.
Brad's Discord Kitten.
You're right, you are. Cancer sucks, but at least I'm not in the guard.
Can you dig it?
Canuck, eh?
Carnivex.
Chad the Frog.
Christopher Gargliano.
Christopher S. Dawson.
Chromavale.
Clad me in Aramite and slapped my cheeks, it's Valdor.
Combusting Pigs.
Connor King.
Crazy Shack 48.
Daniel Field 5150.
Deathcore Sapper.
Did we do the merch plug this week? Shit, we didn't. We also have merch at Patreon, or fuck. We also have merch at poorhammer.com. You could go do. Thanks. You're amazing. We need more patrons like you.
Dominic Calcico.
Dragon 3543.
Hervea.
Ethan Flores.
Eve the Thief.
Fear the Beard.
Fiona thinks a cog fortress in a rice hat is cute.
Frosty Hobbies.
Gathering Clouds.
Gear Overlord.
Geet.
Glacy.
Gutsy Hyena.
Happy Brontosaurus.
I'm Rocky.
Heretic Talks.
Hey look, Marathi and Lilith are playing footsie with each other.
Hey look, it's Carter.
Hyena Beans.
Hypnotic Spectre.
If Eric watches Brad dressed as a fire slayer while dressed as a firesite team, is that cucking?
I don't even get that one. IKEA. People mistake me for the store sometimes.
Ill Indy.
Is Battle Beast just Worf's persona?
Isaac Hall.
Istvan Wolf.
Jarrett DePerna.
Justin Udacek.
Kozak.
Kozik, but I'm deployed.
Krishna.
Lucas.
Lord of Chaos.
Matthew Tsushima.
Michael Melcher.
Midwestern Chaos Cult is corn for the corn god.
Minnesota.
Was in caps, you had to. Miracle Dice did nothing wrong. Hey, that's topical.
Mr. Diesel.
Mixolodius.
Burnt toast.
Morfield 55.
My oppressor cannon knows melee.
Narako the Transbian Shark.
Nate Brown.
Naderd hates Darren Hill.
Not EE.
Nurgling who discovered a helmet.
Omega Shark.
Pacific Rim 3, The Return of Christ.
Pierce forgot about changing their name as a bit for a while.
It's been a long while now, Pierce. Proteus 7331.
Quellen.
Rain Pletcher.
Reigns 13.
Rethus Khan.
Ring Ray.
Rock.
Rogue Trader Jake.
Ross Warlock.
Raw.
Rymora.
Rodgrod Medflog.
Saf Jep, it's German, deal with it.
Sriracha Sauce.
Scott Galmir.
Scott the Irish.
Shane the Wizard.
Shax's Pet Otter.
Sister Leviathan of the Sororitas.
Smug Astolfo Emoji.
Sorry, you'll have to imagine the pun.
Stev.
God damn it. Ta'al Keneb Ebi Ani An.
The Harold Holt Community Pool.
The OBR Spearhead is 700 points. The new Crew Combat Patrol is only 290.
The Orc List with no melee.
The Real Actual Babadook.
The Solar Sect of Mystic Wisdom.
Thousand Suns deserve what happened to them on Prospero. Up the Space Wolves.
The Tired EMR.
The Crusader 13.
The Fish Guy.
The Uladroth.
They're silencing us patrons. Please help get the word out.
Thrango.
Thumpersmith 2.
Tom McGarth.
Uiluna.
Vati the Picori.
Vadim Kowalski.
Vangriff.
Vulcan Lives.
Stomp Stomp. Woodstock.
Wysamad 2.
Zequispy Nekwan. Okay, that's a good one.
That is... I was not ready for that one at all. Zebru.
And Zimbabwe. Thank you all so much for supporting the show. You mean the world to us. We also have producers we shout out every week. They are keeping the lights on around here. They are Atharian, proxying everything.
Eva. Takadat.
Billy the Git.
Brad. Eric. Please name my Baneblade.
Breaking News, 480 Custodian Guard. That's the name.
Apparently, name it Breaking News.
Actually, Breaking News is not the worst Baneblade name.
That's actually not bad.
Like, you can kind of make that work.
Yeah. C5 Dynamite.
Certified Pegstar.
Charles Lang.
Corvus.
Demolition Man.
Dolphin Caviar.
Gilgamesh Versus.
Kiwi Fruitbird.
La Boot Bloop.
Loaf of Disappointment.
And J. Harlan.
Pizza 00100.
Robohap.
Sam Brown.
Saphirian.
Scott the Jim Crab, Mr. Festastic.
Sorry, Eric, I forgot to change my name for a while.
The fucking God Emperor of Mankind.
The God Emperor's Denim Thong.
The Tao Fire Warrior who can't shoot. It's hard to do the glottal stops in those, by the way.
It is quite difficult, but you got there. The Terrible Toledo Tickler.
Victorian Batman.
Wargame Simulator.
And wondered why Patreon thought 50 letters would.
Thank you so much for supporting the show.
And if you would like to join any of them, you can go to patreon.com/solely-singleton to help. I promise it's worth the money. Did that sound convincing?
Yeah, I was like, no bias at all. I swear.
All right, that does it for us this week. We are out of here.
Sounds good.